Welcome to the Monday Club, in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. I'm Neil Loughran, and this week we're going to discuss the split season and the future of amateurism in the GAA. Okay, I am joined by Irish News sports editor Paul McConville and regular guest Cahair O'Kane, who in our fourth week has decided that he's just going to wear what he wants. Fair play, just going with a t-shirt.
Good to see you, mate.
You're like a man who's going to Australia for a month.
Good to see you.
Or
Good
Turkey.
Mate. Me and Dara are booked together.
So unfortunately the wardrobe budget hasn't fully kicked in yet, Neil. So
No.
Good to see you made it back from Roscommon okay anyway.
Yeah, it was a long day. That was a long day. Hails to all four seasons in Hyde Park yesterday. Hailstones,
rain, sun and Kieran McGeeney.
and wind. And Kieran McGeeney, yes, loving life in his own clouds. I noticed he was. Oh, yeah.
Were they like proper on clouds or were they
Not like mine.
were they team version?
Not my figures. Okay, so we are going to talk about the split season and the amateur situation within GAA because these topics have come up in the last week, and later this month at GAA Congress, a motion is going forward to extend the inter-county season by a couple of weeks into August. It's one of these conversations, Paul, that has been ongoing since the very inception of the split season post-COVID. Like a large cohort within the GAA have always been uncomfortable, I guess, with the idea of exceeding so much of the summer months to other sports and so forth. It's a tradition is a big thing in the GAA, and people were very much wedded to September. But what's your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, tradition is a big thing, but I don't think tradition should ever be a barrier to progress. And like every other sport in Ireland,
like a true politician.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I mean, every other sport in Ireland has evolved and changed. I mean, we talk about ceding ground in August to other sports, but realistically, what is that? Because the rugby season hasn't really kicked in. The URC, you have the League of Ireland. They take a break in sort of July time, and they're back in August. But realistically, is there the same crossover of fans, supporters, viewers, whatever at that time? I don't think that there necessarily is. I think one of the biggest barriers, or the argument, has been that August should be the time then when the club season gets its time in the sun, so to speak. You talk about tradition. I'm unfortunately old enough to remember when the All-Ireland finals were the third week of September, and I'm even old enough to remember when we got a day off school when Down won the All-Ireland in 91-94.
1968.
No,
wasn't it, Paul?
I think, yeah. So we got a day off school in 94. I'm all for the September All-Ireland finals.
For Down winning them.
Yeah, for Down winning. He must have got a day off nursery school when Derry won their one in a row.
I was 4.5. It wasn't even 5. No, I was just short of 5. But there's a famous photo, not famous, it's a photo in our house. It's not a famous photo.
It's famous in
a photo in our house of me and the brother holding Sam Maguire with the whole school, and the couple of Derry players had brought it. But I was raging at Danny Click, the photographer, because he captioned it that I was Cahill.
Oh, really?
I remember being raging at the age of 5,
that
he called me Cahill. So
Danny's still going. I saw him. He was honoured at
Unbelievable.
Celtic Park last week. Sorry, I digress, but fair play to that man. But yes, I think that we're sort of getting to the nub of why this conversation has dragged on, and why this proposal is coming up, because there are a lot of there is this kind of sense of well, why like everything's so congested, it feels everything feels on top of us, from the start of the league until the end of the championship in the last weekend of July. You don't have time to breathe. You've barely time to really look ahead to these games before another one's up, and then like that's before you even come to the financial implications of week on week. Like I was in Roscommon yesterday, and I think the attendance was 6,200 or something, and probably at least half of that was Armagh supporters. You know what I mean? And like it's the big outlay, and there's just a lot of strands to it, Cahair, but there is obviously a bigger picture here, and this is part, the reason why the split season came into operation in the first place, because it was due to a lot of lobbying from the likes of the Club Players Association and so forth. So talk us through why it's such a bad idea in your view to move into August.
Well, the first point I would make is, what do we gain? What, like, if we push those All-Ireland finals back 2 weeks into August, what do we gain? The only thing that changes about the entire calendar is that the All-Ireland hurling final and the All-Ireland football final move back. There's not another game in the whole season that moves under the proposal. So what's the point of that? The damage that it does for the value that you're going to get out of those extra couple of weeks.
What damage does it do?
The damage that it does, right? Well, you take Galway as an example, right? So Galway need 14 weekends. Massive dual county. So many dual players. They need 14 weekends to play their hurling and football championships. They played week on week. This year they are due to start on the August bank holiday weekend, on the first weekend of August. So that would be redundant to them next year. And the weekend after would be redundant to them as well. So they've lost 2 weeks. The last time there was a restructure, they had to cut their number of games. The clubs were guaranteed with their county players from 64. If this happens, they're having to cut from 43. Like 3 games for clubs with their county players in a whole year is bizarre. It's not right.
Yeah, but I think you use the example of the Galway Club Championships. There's many club championships that start around the start of August, but the vast majority of club championships now
you
are
have
played.
to start at the back. Like,
I know that, but the vast majority of them are group stages now. Some of the early games aren't meaningful. You made the point a couple of weeks ago, even about the Derry Club Championship when it went to a group stage. Conor Glass, players like that were rested for group games. They weren't meaningful games. Is it not, coming as a club player, is it not that you want more meaningful games rather than just more games?
Which is why I always go back to the Tyrone model, and what the best model is that they play more league games and then have a format of a closer to a knockout championship. But that's just not happening in the vast majority of counties. There's no desire in most counties to go that way, so that's their prerogative.
But is that a financial thing? Is that a kind of like, let's get more championship games, or let's get just
Well, if you don't do that, if you just say, right, well, the league's cut off in the middle of August, county players won't play in them, and then we'll go straight knockout. County players will play 1 game for their club in the whole year. Like, that's not what it's supposed to be. So that's just completely wrong. It's like this whole thing. I'm going to start now. Like, Neil's ready for me to start.
I can see you getting angry. I think that's why you wore a shirt. Like, you didn't want too many layers. But anyway, go ahead.
This whole thing is entirely driven by the media. Like, it comes from so many seats in our own industry that it's pushed by, and it's like there's so little thought for the actual impact.
Do you mean that to serve the media's needs? Do you mean
both? Well, the media wants to serve its own needs, so it complains about the All Ireland's been too short and too early, and like. Don't get me wrong, as a journalist in a professional capacity, it would be great. I'd love, in that sense, for the All-Ireland finals to be in September. But from every other perspective, it makes no sense, and it's a really bad thing for the GAA. And like, don't get me wrong, what they have now, the All-Ireland's at the end of July, is the best case scenario for everybody. That is the perfect structure of a season. What they have is not perfect within that, in terms of counties are getting it wrong in terms of how they operate their own club leagues, their own club championships. Maybe the inter-county calendar could be tweaked here and there, but as a basic structure, inter-county to the end of July, club from the start of August. But that's it.
Yeah, Jarlath Byrne said it maybe a couple of years ago with sort of maybe in a frivolous way, but if people want an All-Ireland final in September, then every single county in Ireland has to run their club championships in exactly the same way and at exactly the same time, and that's obviously never going to happen. But Cahair's point that the county game has to seed something for the clubs, championships and leagues to be run. Is it not the onus on the actual counties themselves to run their own competitions in a more efficient way?
But how do you do that within that structure? So if you push those out into August, the only way that you can do that is either you trim off your club games, you take, as in Galway, you take games away from the clubs, or you try and put games into the middle of the inter-county season, which defeats the entire purpose of a split season. The county players love the split season. They've overwhelmingly, repeatedly voted in favour of it when the GPA have asked them, and there is just no way that we can go back to what was there in the past, where they used to talk about April Club Month, where
like didn't last too long.
But people seem to think that that's the solution. Let's put club games back in. Let's stretch the county season out and then put club games back in the middle of it. Forgetting what an unmitigated disaster that was. The players were pulled from pillar to post. It was a nightmare for them. They were getting pulled by the club. Play for us. They were getting pulled by the county manager. Don't be playing that game.
Portugal.
You've
Yeah,
suddenly
we're
got
getting
a
pulled.
hamstring. We're playing a challenge game on Saturday morning. Your club games on Sunday. Like, so
Some of them were getting pulled by stag do's, Easter holidays, things like that. It was, as you say, it was an absolute disaster to have that then.
and that's my whole thing on this. Like, nobody can give me a good reason. Can anybody give me a good reason why we should do this?
Well, I suppose to play devil's advocate a wee bit, and it's probably a moot point because the hurling final and the football final are still going to be a week apart. To my mind, I think it's unfair on especially the hurling finalists to basically have, you'll have an extra week or two to build up to the game, but once you have, we have a story like Tip last year or Clare the year before, guys want to enjoy that story, the one, but once they win that game on a Sunday, they'll get a couple of days coverage. Sorry, Cahair's going to kick the media here again. Yeah. They'll get a couple of days coverage, and then it's all eyes on the football final. I mean, okay, it runs back to tradition a wee bit. Like, well, bring back the hurling final a week, have 2 weeks between them at least, because as you say, they're the only games that are moving. If you keep, say, the hurling final when it is, put the football final at an extra week.
But then you have to move the football semi-finals.
Yeah. But I mean,
and I get what you're saying, but what is on the table? That is not on the table. What is on the table is moving.
Yeah, that's the crux of the issue. If there was a proposal that you could see where there was maybe space given a week or whatever, between the or extra time before the start of the provincial championships, but to just for the focus purely to be on providing this window for the All-Ireland finals, I don't entirely get that. And I think we've moved on from the part of the debate, probably tying in with what you were talking about there, like, because again, you're talking about the media, maybe parts of the media driving this narrative about about extending the inter-county season, and part of that always comes back to, well, sure, so and so were out, and their championship was over in. Calm down. It's over in they're finished in June or whatever. What I mean? Sure, why can't But I mean, Cahair, you're a club player yourself. Like the realities of the calendar as a whole now is that there's a knowing that guys or girls can prepare and can look ahead and can book holidays and can plot their year out, instead of this notion of, well, sure, we'll wait till we've finished, till we're out of the championship and then we'll go from there and take it. It's completely outdated.
Totally. Look, the one of the probably the single biggest word and the single biggest thing in all of this is certainty. Club players wanted certainty, and they deserve certainty in terms of their dates at the start of the year. Nobody's saying we're going to tell you in January that you're going to be playing on Friday the 14th of August, but you're going to be playing on the weekend of the 14th to the 16th of August. You have championship that weekend, and that allows you to then plan your life around it. And what was happening, and what will happen if this comes in, is that counties will either have to shave 2 weeks off and not plan to start until the 3rd week of August, or they're going to have to take chances that they're going to start on the last weekend of July, the first weekend of August, and then they're going to have to move. And that,
but it's only going to affect 2 counties really at the end of it.
Which two? There's about 10 counties that could reach an All-Ireland football final this year. There's about, like, if the draw fell for any one of 10 counties, they could reach an all. So you tell me now. So can players in Derry?
But it's not so much. I think Derry players be safe enough to book their holidays. Yeah.
Come back to me.
But my point is that you say, I agree with you in terms of the certainty. Guys want certainty. They want to know I'm going to.
But you're
going to be playing a match in August. My point is that yes, you're going to play on the 14th of August. You're going to play a club championship game, but what weight has that game got? If that game is the first group game of a kind of 16 team group stage where 12 teams go through, what
it depends
meaning
what
has
club
that
you
game?
play for.
Yeah,
the top 2 or 3 clubs might be all right.
Yeah,
but everybody else is fighting and scrapping for.
But then again, you're gambling, you're guessing. You're kind of saying, right? It's just go back to 4. There's no format that's going to suit every single county, or there's no format that every county is going to agree on. You talk about Tyrone. Tyrone have a fantastic club scene. the leagues are meaningful. The club championship doesn't start until the middle of September, and we know, but as you said, the leagues, but then they go and they play their league final sort of after the championship final, so they obviously,
because their window's so tight, they can't get it finished, they can't get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would love to play it, but it's because they insist on having their 7 or 8 games with county players in the league, and then playing their championship and giving everybody 2 weeks on 2 weeks on 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's no date on which they, and actually, like, they've cut away. Like, they had league semi-finals.
That's right,
They've cut away from those, and I actually think, I'm not sure of this, but I think they're actually cutting their league final as well now. It'll be top team wins the league, because they just ran into so many problems trying to get it done, and that is how tight the club window was. And it's just back to the certainty. Like, you say it's only 2 counties affected, but the problem is you don't know which counties are going to be affected.
Sure,
So if you're in any one of the counties that might have a chance of reaching an All-Ireland final, you have no certainty. None. And so, do you book your holidays? Do you book your, like, I'll give you a very real example. Like, my brother's getting married in November, and we were trying to book a stag do, and the best man, he rang me and was like, well, we go stag do start October, end of September. I was like, nope. Middle of September, nope. Start of September, nope. August, nope.
it's all right. I'll give you time off, Cahair. Sign that.
But what you're looking at is football dates.
Yeah.
And so we were able to put in a request, and with a wee bit of certainty, we were able to take a weekend at the end of July, 5 months before the wedding, and say, there, we can go on a stag do there, and put a request to the county board in advance of the fixtures being published, and that's a free weekend for us now. And that is the kind of certain, because when the fixtures originally came out, they missed the request, and they put us down for a game that weekend, and my head just went in my hands. I was like, oh, gee, like, what are we going to do?
It is a headache, yeah.
But that is the very definition of what I'm talking about.
But I agree with you in the sense of
and that was only a league game.
Yeah.
The championship game, nobody would have went on the stag do. Nobody would have gone.
But the point too, that I kind of broadly agree with Cahair's, is that if we're only going to move the All-Ireland final, what is the point of it? Like, if you are looking at the season as a whole, and I know the proposal is for this, like, 30-week, county season.
Sorry, can I just make the point that when you're saying that, if they vote this in, that is it for 5 years. They cannot touch it again.
Exactly.
So they can't say, right, we'll do it this year. And actually, no, do you know what? Now next year we'll move those games back a fortnight. That's it for 5 years.
I think the consequences, we talked about the consequences for the club game. There are consequences for the county game, and as we said, like, there's two teams in the All-Ireland final, but there's obviously 32 teams in football and hurling leagues, or 33, whatever. But the knock-on effect is that they're going to do away with pre-season competitions. You're not going to have the McKenna Cup. You're going to have a sort of hard 30-week block where you have to run your county season off. Now, I spoke to Conor Laverty on Saturday night after Down's win over Westmeath, and it was very interesting to hear Jim McGuinness's comments yesterday after they beat Mayo. So, Conor was basically saying, we have won 3 out of 3 in Division 3, which is great now, some hard fought games there and that, but he says we can't really afford to kind of experiment, we can't afford to kind of blend players into the team, because it's a difference between Sam Maguire and Tailteann Cup sort of thing, like, so we have to win matches. It's a complete results game. Whereas the flip side of it, Jim saying yesterday, like, our 3 goals for the league are to kind of bring players on, bring new players into the squad, make, increase the depth of the squad. You saw, like, Conor McCahill coming in yesterday, having a great game, scoring a couple of points, and without the pre-season competitions, the teams in Division 3 who are fighting the bit out to get into Sam Maguire, they've no kind of grounds for experiment.
But
you know what I mean?
Fairness,
That's kind of like,
I get that, but I also would say that it wouldn't matter if there was a month between games. Down still need to win games to get into the... So it wouldn't matter what length the season was. They still would not be able to experiment.
But Donegal are sitting there on three wins out of 6 points. But they basically they can afford to lose 2 more games.
What Paul's saying is that that the McKenna Cup is that ground for looking at guys like, obviously, like Pierce McPollan, for example, has come into the Down team this year, having played all 3 of their McKenna Cup games, and that's the ground where, obviously, in the absence of pre-season competitions, you're back into that. I mean, you're back into the kind of Wild West scenario of challenge games and whatever, and that's going to happen no matter what. Yeah, is put
should just make that point that if this is voted in, that's it. Pre-season competitions are gone. The McKenna Cup is over. No more FPD league, no more. Which, like, I think if you ask managers and players which you know, it's almost as if people haven't cottoned on that it's one or the other here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, sure, it'll be all right. We'll push the All-Ireland finals back, and then we'll argue the McKenna Cup.
Whereas
back
that's a
into
very
existence.
definite part of it.
That is
Like
a very
yeah,
definite
yeah.
black and white. There's no more McKenna Cup here.
Yeah.
So they'll be questioning whether that's worth the trade-off, because you're right. And then
Well, Ulster counties certainly will. You know,
absolutely, and Connacht as well. And
Yeah,
like,
of course.
there's staunch opposition to this in a lot of places, in a lot of counties, and the sort of chat I'm getting is like it could be pretty close. There seems to be a bit of complacency on the GAA's end that this is sort of going to roll through, and they've tempered a bit of the disquiet from a couple of the bigger counties that would have been against it. And I don't know that it's. I don't just know that it's as clear cut. And the McKenna Cup and the pre-season competitions is one of the big factors in it, because you say they will play challenge games, and then but the problem being that, to go into the detail, like the GPA insists on 6 weeks before the first competitive game in terms of expenses. If the first competitive game is at the end of January, that's no expenses to the middle of December. But if they're playing challenge games from the start of January off Broadway, then they'll want to be training 6 weeks before that. So that's a full month for players with no expenses under this. There's going to be like the idea of a closed season, like unless it's really, really strictly policed, it doesn't work. You've tried so many different.
We know that it's not.
cases,
We even know now that it's not strictly policed. Although there's a nod and a wink, and even Ulster Secretary Brian McAvoy alluded to it in his report, saying we know this is happening. We know counties are supposed to be back at this stage. We know they're back before that. But what sanctions are available to
There's plenty available.
provincial bodies? Yeah, but nobody wants to pull. Nobody wants to pull that lever. Like
None
we had Armagh Tyrone on the 2nd of January. This year in the McKenna Cup, absolutely packed out, and the Ulster Council sees that and thinks, well, the origin a lot of these,
and I understand that.
Yeah.
They might as well get that money, because the counties are going to play the games anyway. People want
exactly.
that. People actually
There's
have
an appetite. There's an appetite
to
for
go
it.
watch
I think the origin of a lot of these pre-season competitions is exactly that. The Connacht League, or there's the FBD League now, the McGrath Cup, or and the McKenna. A lot of these were almost like fundraisers for counties and for teams. If you go back 50, 60, 100 years, that's what they essentially were. And as I said, if the Ulster Council is seeing Armagh Tyrone packing out
the injury, wasn't it the Leinster was called like the injuries funds? Injuries fund for players.
It's very hard for them to look at that Armagh Tyrone game and say, God, we could really be doing this, but it's the 2nd of January.
And it's actually, and it is. Then that's the point of, again, what is the point of this in terms of the All-Ireland's going into August? Because which is more beneficial in the round to everybody, to have pre-season competitions or to have your All-Ireland finals in August? And you look at all the arguments for having your All-Ireland finals in August, and they're as weak as water. Like there's nothing substantial. Like promotion of the games. It'll not matter one difference. It'll not matter one bit. If we have an extra week between the All-Ireland final, and the All-Ireland final pre-match press event involves 3 players, one of which is kept for Sunday newspapers, one of which is sub-goalkeeper, and 2 members of management.
Sub-goalkeepers.
So it is not, the promotion thing is not a time issue. It is an access issue.
I get that. But one issue I think that I've noticed though since the onset of the split season is obviously we would all love to follow all aspects of Gaelic games, and I do think that because of the just the nature of how congested it is now, for people who want to, I must say that the last couple of hurling championships have largely passed me by to a degree, because you're so consumed with the football and so forth. Is that just a trade-off where you have to accept? Because it feels unfortunate.
It seems to go counter to this whole thing of promoting the games, because to sort of put my sports editor hat on a wee bit, like you're talking about, there's so many double weeks now where you football and hurling on, and you don't want to make a call and saying, what are the main games that we're going to cover, and they're invariably, when you've Armagh playing Monaghan, Donegal playing Mayo or Kerry or something, it's a no-brainer really. They're the games you focus on, but there's so many good stories there. The down hurlers the last few years, spoke about it the other week. What's going on in Antrim, basically, we touched on that, but I mean, so you are you're suffering really. Like and the league Sunday game on Sunday, or the league Sunday program on Sunday evening RTE becomes longer and longer, and you need a bit of staying power to get through that. Like
watch it in
yeah,
installments through the
exactly.
weekend.
So I mean, Cahair watches it 8 times before he comes here. It is.
Neil's mate Peter was on it last night.
It's I know you're a fan, but I mean, it's like it is the whole thing is that the county season's compressed, right? Which is Cahair has no sympathy for
I
that
don't
at all.
know, because
but on the flip side of it is, do those guys get the exposure, or does it mean that the league itself suffers? Because is the league something worth winning now? Because sorry to go back to what Jim McGuinness said yesterday. They've won 3 out of 3. They're sitting there with 6 points. They can afford to lose another couple of games, win one, stay up. And famously last year they tried their darndest not to get into the league final. Now there is a bit of a gap now to the championship, even Tyrone and Armagh are playing in that preliminary round. There's going to be a week or two, should one of them get to a league final. But I mean, it's not, the league is one of the 3 competitions that a county can win. Your provincial and your All-Ireland and the league, but a lot of them, especially the top end clubs, seem to be sort of sacking that off and saying, look, once we're safe, and then the flip side of that is you've teams in bottom end is Division 2, 3 scrapping for I don't know what championship I'm going to be in a few weeks' time. So it I think it sort of devalues the league as well. But is the league worth winning anymore?
Well, I'll make a few points on this. Actually, I asked Jim McGuinness about that after the Donegal Kerry game, and he pretty much said like it was more palatable, much more palatable to them this year than it had been last year, because that break has now been built in. He sort of stayed since with the mantra of we're only developing and playing, but like there's no doubt that for them winning the league is not the it was not the priority, but it's also not something to be scared of the way it was last year in terms of being in the league final, because they I think they're last out in the quarterfinals in Ulster as well, so they have a bit of a gap. So like I would expect Donegal will reach the league final and could well win the league this year, and that
if they want to,
I think they will
there's
want to.
no reason for them not to want to.
They will want to, but like you're going back to. So I forgot. I've lost my train of thought now for a second. What else did you say there?
Said a lot of things, Cahair.
Said a lot of things now. Lost my train of thought. Donegal.
Talking about the league.
The league's compressed. The compressed season.
Sorry, I know it's probably not the best example to use, but because soccer's gone the other way, there's so many games. But like the Champions League plays 16 games on a Tuesday and Wednesday night. Like they play, because the first people in all of this are the players, and the players want to play games. The players used to sit for a month between championship games. They win their first round, and then the next quarter-final would happen, and then the next quarter-final happened, and then the next quarter-final would happen, and you were sitting 4 weeks between your quarter-final and your semi-final Ulster.
I remember when there was no quarter-finals. All-Ireland quarter-finals.
No, Ulster.
No, sorry, Ulster. I thought you were talking about All-Ireland.
And that was madness. And one of the great things that the calendar currently has is balance in terms of the quarterfinals of the All-Ireland and the semi-finals of the All-Ireland being played on the same weekend, on Saturday and Sunday. It means that the 2 teams have the same amount of rest, barring 24 hours. But there was the imbalance of a week for one team and 2 weeks for the other team, and who got the better. And it was like there was just constant imbalances in the old way of doing things. The calendar that we have now is the best possible solution. Players want games. Like, how do you frame a league that you give everybody space to breathe? Like, that league would last a year and a half.
But you said the calendar is perfect, but they're going and changing the football championship again.
But that's a different thing. That's a structural championship.
But why is that? If yes, I understand you're operating within a calendar in terms of time frame, but then you're taking out an extra game, really, aren't you? By not going,
you're taking out a game, you're taking out a game. But like in the amateur report at the weekend, it was a telling line that players wanted a 7-month season and managers wanted a 9-month season. Yes. That was the bottom line in that whole thing for me.
It takes 9 months to birth an All-Ireland final.
There's no doubt there's an expenses element to that, like in terms of managers. But I have to say, I don't genuinely believe that is the primary concern at all in any shape or form. And people will say that's the easy thing to say. They just want more money. Yeah. I firmly believe that it's a managerial. They want space between games because. And I actually think it helps the game. I think it helps football in that you'll often find that the first round championship games can be quite flat and dead, and it's for the simple reason that the draw was made 4 months ago, and Donegal and Down will have spent 5 months looking at each other and will have drilled, and then all of a sudden their next opponent is a week away,
straight on them.
and they have 6 or 7 days, and it's more free and more fluid, and they're themselves. And so the more the games are on top of them, managers want the 2 weeks to sit back, study, plan, put into place, go and fulfill that.
But you say players want this, players want games, but what about the players who get a hamstring injury and all of a sudden they miss an entire...
Injuries are part of life.
I know they are.
And we use that an awful lot. If fella get injured, they miss them up. Like,
there's no
people get injured, they miss football. Like that's
yeah, but the window is much more narrow now.
It's not so much the guy that gets injured; it's the guy that's coming in to replace him. And with fewer games, managers have fewer games to get those fringe guys in and have a look at them. I mean, suppose we'll hark back to the pre-season thing and that there's less room for experimentation, or not looking at guys who are fringe guys. Right, well, if he gets injured, so and so comes in at just going back to the Down example, use Pierce McPolan coming in, Callum Rogers who've been in there, they've looked at them in pre-season in the McKenna Cup and thought, giving them a run. When they got Danny McGill got the injury for Down, they're happy enough to say, well, we have players that can slot in. I mean, so as I said, it's not the guy that gets injured, although if it's a big key player, that's a big problem. But it's having that panel that like you talk about the all week about the Armagh panel was very strong, but fewer games mean fewer opportunities to look at
and
players,
I get that, and that is all from managers' perspective, which is understandable. From the players' perspective and from the supporters' perspective, the leagues are better than they've ever been. Look at the crowds going to league games. Look at how competitive league games are. Used to be the league was complete dead duck, and you had nothing on TV. There was no real interest in the league.
Yeah, but then it's funny because then you're still asking the question: is the league worth winning? Because
well, it depends which league.
Because it's so close.
Division 2,
exactly,
3 and 4 are massive. Division 1. It's not like for Division 1 teams, it's not their primary aim.
Yeah.
Everybody in Division 1 is thinking All-Ireland.
Yeah.
So,
but they are the top teams. Surely you should want the top teams to win the top division.
It's
you know what I mean?
It's cultural, it's a historical thing.
But I mean,
you just want to win the championship.
Well,
that is your priority. Nothing will ever change that.
Aye, but still having a league. But an inter-county career is short. There's only so many teams will win All-Irelands. There's so few trophies to win. I mean, I don't know. You maybe have a better insight. But do you think those Derry boys who won the league under Mickey Hart a couple of years ago, Division 1, that's a medal that they'll treasure in years to come? Depends what else they do or don't win.
I think they'll treasure the 2 Ulster medals way above the league.
Yeah,
way above the league, and it'll be nice to have the league medal, and the memories of that game, would be great. In the fact that the manner in which they won it will probably stay with everybody from there because of that Dublin team and the way that the game went. But if you measure the 2 medals against each other, it's an Ulster medal way over a league medal, and it's an All-Ireland medal for everybody in those top 8 or 9 teams. It's an All-Ireland medal miles and miles and miles above a National League medal. So and that is. So they're tapering their seasons, they're tapering their training, they're trying to peak at the right times, which is, again, probably less of a factor now. There was so much trying to taper and peak in the older calendar where you had such long gaps between games and it was trying to come up and down at the right times, and now it's more bursts, wick, bang, 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 and then you're gone. And it's more ruthless. But again, we're back to... I think sometimes the people who want All-Ireland finals to go back don't even realise the impact that it will have on them as spectators. I think it would weaken the game to not have it bang, bang, bang. And
well, I don't know, but I understand. But after it was the Down Donegal semi-final last year, was when Jim McGuinness came out with that famous line about our supporters are shelling out money week. They obviously played the preliminary round
and
last year.
That is the one single argument that I would have against the split season.
He said, basically they played preliminary, they were out, they played down, quarterfinal, semi-final in successive weeks, and then there was all this talk about taking the Ulster final to Crook Park and all that sort of thing, and that was just straw that broke the camel's back.
Ticket prices for Ulster Championship matches are too high. They're
Yeah.
too high.
Yeah.
But I mean, that
would alleviate a lot of that. They're just too high, and league ticket prices are
Well, I
too
was
high.
going to say the league sets the prices.
The league sets the prices. Absolutely, the league prices have crept up and up and up, and that is
championship
forced.
always has to go, yeah.
Championship has to be above that, and that is the single sole argument that I would have against the split season is the cost to supporters of.
Finally found it. We'll find a reason why he doesn't like a split
No,
season.
I wouldn't say I don't like
that,
it.
Just clip that bit. That'll do.
One thing I'm wondering before we wrap up this bit about the split season, is there a concern, just knowing the way these things sometimes go, and say the motion gets passed at Congress, it comes in from next year, we have the All-Ireland finals in August, and at surface level, people looking at it go, well, that actually worked. That's worked out all right. I wonder, could we maybe squeeze another week or two? And is that's would be my worry slightly, that you then get this
sort of drift,
bit of a drift, and people starting to go, well, like, why did we even change in the first place? You know what I mean? It's is that something that would worry you, Cahair? Do you think like that would become a separate conversation?
In the sense of, it wouldn't worry me in the short term because it's written into the 5-year
no,
moratorium.
but in the long term.
But in the long term, absolutely, because there'll be people who are never happy, and the first thing would be like, so what do we gain? We're into August now. Schools still aren't back. All that argument about schools, which is the biggest pile of bullshit. Don't start me on that argument about the schools. It's like the schools. When Ulster Championships were being won in May and June rather than the middle of July, there was far more value. There was red and white days in every school in Derry in 2022 and 2023 every weekend. Those weekends were the best promotion.
Well, just to counter that, actually, 2024 when Armagh got to an All-Ireland final, it was basically
the All-Ireland final didn't need sold.
I know,
of
course,
game,
but I mean, you had this in July. You had the quarterfinals, semi-finals, within that month. And the kind of quirky kind of unintended consequences of a lot of this is that you go on holiday to Spain or France to a resort, and there's GAA Championship games on the big screen where there used to be like Euros and World Cups, and these places they have posters advertising. Oh, it's
promotion,
but it's fantastic promotion. No, but it's brilliant. It's growing the game. I mean, unfortunately I was on holidays, and unfortunately, but I was fortunately on holidays in 2024 when Armagh beat Kerry in the semi-final, having a dinner in the campsite, trying to have a wee duke at the TV to see whether we had to do a supplement or not for the All-Ireland final, but it was packed, and there was, I think, there was probably more Armagh than Kerry there, but you have this thing of like, we're taking it abroad. You know what I mean? It's going across Europe.
Global.
These places know their flipping. They know their audience. They know their customers. Like they know if we put GAA on the TV in July, we're going to.
And the argument about clashing with World Cups and everybody remembers, Ireland, Spain clashing with Derry, Donegal. There's no date in the calendar. You're not going to clash with something. You're going to clash with Olympics. You're going to clash with Rugby World Cup. You're going to clash with Soccer World Cup. You're going to clash with something. Yeah. So that again is another dead duck of an argument. It's like I would just love somebody to give me a good reason why we should do this, because I've given you plenty why we shouldn't.
It's just, you pointed it out. It's like it's the expense on supporters. I mean, you take a month like July. If people are getting paid monthly, and you have quarterfinal, semi-final, and final to factor in within it.
You're still buying your All-Ireland final ticket in July. You mightn't go till August, but you're still buying in July. Like,
it's coming out of that pot. Like.
Guys,
you tried. Sorry.
No, I thought I mean, as you say, it doesn't make sense if they're not moving other stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's stretching it out, and I said at the top there, what are you? What is this mythical ground that you're ceding to soccer or rugby? You're not ceding it to rugby. There's no rugby on. There's no meaningful rugby on at that time of year. Soccer. What is it? League of Ireland. The Premier League starts, but again, you're not. It's a bit
of a scare tactic, that kind of talk. To start. But anyway, not moving off it entirely, but some of the same strands apply here with when we talk about the Amateur Status Review Committee, which was published last week. And it actually,
you're supposed to make that sound sexier.
Sorry, I meant the ASRC report.
Love an acronym
last week.
GAA, love an acronym now.
And it reminded me, reading it, and there's a lot.
You
to
read it?
No, well, I skim read part of it. I knew you'd read it anyway, but it reminded me of. I mean, this is what maybe ties the two things that we're talking about together. The Waddy Graham statement last year, where they talked a lot about they issued a statement regarding the proposal and the implications of moving the All Ireland finals into August, and this notion of I think the term was sleepwalking towards professionalism, and reading this report, and I had a few people text me, a few people who have been involved with county setups at different. In different positions, different levels over the weekend, and basically saying, like, how on earth do you rein this back in? Like, obviously these people are seeing it at much closer quarters than you or I, and saying, like, how do you, like, has the horse bolted on this, or what do you feel like these proposals are realistic in just from in terms of curtailing the financial side of it?
Well, the proposals themselves, the report is pretty wide-ranging in what it touches on in terms of all the themes and the ideas and the problems that are faced, but the actual proposals are pretty small for now. It's like, let's do what we can for now. Let's set up a body to look at all these things.
Yes.
And I think there's only 2 proposals on it. So
Yeah, it's a lot of findings and stuff like that.
In terms of what now, if the body is set up and then goes on to look at it and have proper impact, then it'll have been worth it. I suppose it's you're always scared of these reports, and that there's been so many reports down the years that have recommended X, Y, and Z, and then been put in the drawer and quietly forgotten about. And there's a pretty good chance that when Jared Burns goes,
this will never be heard of.
This will go too and never be heard of again, or very.
Yeah, I think.
But the wider point, Cahair, though, like, or both of you, is like, the wider point about the intercounty machine and where we have got to. Like, were there aspects of it that you think we do need to?
I think one of the things that jumped out for me is this, certification process that they're proposing. They're proposing this certification process whereby if you don't have all these, tick all these boxes, you're not going to be admitted to the,
Yes.
So, I mean, and that has to do with, expenditure on your county team, rest periods and training schedules for players and things like that. Again, it's one of these things, like, if it has teeth, it might work, but are you really going to throw a team out of the league if they don't have this certificate by the certain date? I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it is an amateur sport. It is an amateur competition that is very well supported throughout the country. Like, they're really going to turn around to Tyrone and say, "Oh, you didn't supply us with your data tracking information by you're out of the league." I mean, I think that's a bit of a.
Well, I think in fairness, it's more that sort of sanction is more around breaking the financial caps that might be put in place, and the sort of, and for me, like, I would love to see them come. I think they're very important, because the amount of money that has been spent on it keeps mushrooming. And the word that always keeps getting used is unsustainable. It's been used for about 20 years and it keeps sustaining.
Yeah.
They keep finding new ways to find more money. Counties are very, very good at fundraising, very, very good at generating income.
Kieran McGeeney made this point yesterday about the money that, like, Armagh have raised.
And no doubt about it. Like,
to sustain what they have.
And that's not the worst thing. It keeps the same. But the outgoings on it is, for me, one of the issues is the outgoing on county teams is chewing up almost every resource of a county board in terms of finance. Like, almost all of the money county boards are spending is going on their county teams, and the rest of it is, like, it might count as income in their what's the word, accounts at the end of a year, but it's like money.
Their percentages,
but it's money.
So
it's money that you take money that the clubs pay in to pay fees for referees. Like, that is technically classed as income, but it's only coming in to go out. And so any money that's going away from the county team is not real money, if you like. It's only passing through, whereas the money that's been raised is almost all exclusively been spent on the county teams, and that's not right.
Yeah, and the Armagh example is a good one, because Armagh are very good at raising, at commercial deals and raising money themselves within the county. But people look at that and say, well, Armagh did all that. They have all this money. They won an All-Ireland in 2024. you know, not going to say out of nowhere, but you know, it was probably they weren't maybe favoured at the start of that year. So other counties see that, other counties that are on the verge of a breakthrough see that, and they think, if we just threw a wee bit more money at it, just a wee bit more, we might get over the line, you know. And that's when you talk about sustainability. That's it. There is going to be, well, there might be a breaking point, but I suppose if again, I'm going to use my old enough to remember, Leeds United was the cautionary tale in Premier League. Throw a load of money, just, you know, try the bot, try the Jackie Charlton, the David O'Leary.
Should they get more time to Clough, do you think?
Peter Redstill. My babies.
You know, I mean, you see where it goes. When people throw money to to chase success, even in an amateur game, it doesn't always guarantee it. Like, you know, and there does need to be some sort of rein in. I get the whole certification process is an attempt to do that, but it's, you know, how effective can it be? You know, as I said, are you going to impose these sanctions on counties, on essentially players, amateur players, because somebody in the boardroom didn't get their figures right? Do you know what I mean? It's very difficult to punish guys who dreamed of winning an All-Ireland or an Ulster Championship or provincial title or whatever by an accounting error, really. You know, something has to be done about it.
It's pretty, like, it needs to be centrally regulated.
Yeah.
You know, like the accounts have to be, I'm not saying the accounts have to be tightened up, but just the spending has to be tightened, because one of the big issues, the report didn't go into much detail, but one of the big things here is integration, and and that is one of the big threads of integration that they're struggling to pull together here. Like, what is this going to cost if the ladies football in Camogie comes in under the umbrella, and there's equality? We can't afford to spend 2 million on our football and hurling teams and then another 2 million on our ladies football and camogie teams. And that is the great unspoken of this thing. Like, that is what the thought process is. And it's like, what are our two options here? We have to find another 2 million, or we have to cut the life out of the 2 million we're spending to spend 1 million on that and 1 million on this, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, but I'm just, that's the thought process and the reality of what's happening in the background there. And how you actually make that fit is a big, big problem. And like, one of the things is, you know, limiting backroom teams and limiting the number of people who can be paid in a proper capacity. And you're talking, you know, half of those would be medical personnel. So within it, there are definitely good ideas, but it's such a monster. Like, I can remember going down to the school in Bestbrook when Jarlath first went for the presidency, before he went in for it, and interviewing him. And at that time, he talked about, you know, cutting the life. I think he called it what did he call it? Can't remember. I'll think of the word in a second. But a juggernaut. He called the inter-county game a juggernaut. And he talked about cutting it back to 2 nights a week at that time, before he got into office. And it was aspirational.
Yeah.
And I think, even though he had a son playing, I still think he didn't realise how big the monster was until he was in the belly of it, looking at it. And he was like, oh Jesus, like, this train is gone. This train, I can't pull this thing back. So what can I do? You can only kind of pull at the reins a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, like, if you mandate counties to do 2 nights, how do you police it? But then it's the old kind of Steve Cram, or Steve Ovett, Seb Coe thing of like,
what are you doing? Because he's
doing Christmas Day?
He only trained twice on Christmas Day.
Exactly. It's, they're training twice. They're training 3 nights. Right? You know, I mean, what happens is, and you know it, like, when a team becomes successful, everybody else copies that team, whether it be tactics, whether it be their backroom team. They say, well, they've got a masseur, they've got a psychologist, we have to get that. Do you know what I mean? And it becomes just that kind of thing. Yeah, but that's, you know, the team that's successful sets the tone, really. And that's the problem then. And as I said, teams overstretch themselves, and that's what it is.
And there's one very important point in that: teams that are successful are driven by the players.
Yes.
The players drive that level, they drive the training. They are the ones. Players oftentimes can't be stopped from training. County managers have said to players, ease off a wee bit, you know, because the players drive the standard. And so you're saying limited, and there's only so much they're expensed for, but they're going doing their own gym sessions, they're going doing different things, and it's, you know, how do you then? It's nearly like trying to limit a mindset, as opposed to limit a physical problem. If you know what I mean, it's trying to, and all you're doing is taking expenses away from them then by limiting them. And again, like I've always been in favour of trying to find ways to balance it out a wee bit, but it's just not easy. Like it's really difficult to realistically do it.
One of the big findings in that report was that there was no general consensus around whether managers or backroom teams should get paid. 30% thought this, then 20% thought this and that. That they should get paid, or that they should get a stipend, or they should get something. But no, there's no kind of general consensus of it. How do you address that? Everybody knows it's a problem, or is it? Some managers mightn't think it's a problem because they're getting a very lucrative existence out of it. But it is a problem for counties. They're overstretching themselves. But what the solution is another matter altogether. And I don't think anybody's really landed at that. Players said in that report too that they don't want the county season to be reduced any further in terms of time. But at the same time, that feeds into expenses. You talked about the 7-month versus the 9-month thing. It's all money at the end of the day. And for an amateur organisation that prides itself on recirculating money in around the grassroots, it's becoming a problem that there is no kind of real clear solution to. And the only problem with that is then that knocks it onto semi-pro, pro models that is obviously where they don't want to go, and let's hope it never gets to that.
Okay, that wraps up this week's Monday Club. Thank you very much to Paul and Cahair, and thank you also to our sponsor, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the podcast, and we'll be back for more next week.